It's a lot of the appearance-based stuff that kind of messes with me because there is that sort of incongruence between that outside versus the inside.
So do you feel like they match yet?
I think they're coming together.
Hello and welcome to the Fuck Suffering Podcast. I am your hostess, Ray Hance. And today we have a beautiful young trans woman on the show. And we are going to talk about anxiety and fear and anxiety and anxiety and anxiety and fear. And being a young trans woman going through gender transition, writing books, looking for love, feeling incapable, confinement, the seeking of external validation, embodied intuition, the incongruence between inside and outside and where that starts to meet vanity. And what does it mean to be unified within? What is our guest question for the I Ching this week? What is my correct path for the new year?
So my question is, I'm moving forward in my life in a couple of different arenas. So I'm getting a license. I'm moving forward with my transition and looking for an industry job or hopefully some book success. And also some stuff concerning like my love life and dating. What do I need to do in service to myself to ensure that I keep my strength, my groundedness, and my excitement when tackling these things?
Okay. Say that. What's this? What's the simplest version of that? I would suggest giving further consideration to the word tackling in there.
Yes.
Like one of the things standing in your way might be coming from the perspective of tackling.
True.
That they are to be tackled. So is there
like football, really just get them? Maybe that's a little too harsh of a way to look at it for at least some of them.
Yeah. So what is at the heart of that question?
I guess it would be, just what do I need to do in service to myself to ensure that I'm on the right path?
Okay. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have your 3 coins?
I do. You said they should be identical.
It helps if they're of a similar weight and shape, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And just 3/4.
Oh, that's perfect. That's totally perfect.
So how's it work? So you throw them and
I'm going to have you hold them in your hand.
Okay.
And consider your question not in your mind, but in your hands. And drop your energy out of your head and into your hands. Just take a couple of deep breaths with a really long exhale. Let the exhale be as long as you can make it. And just relax your hands. No gripping. No gripping. Just relaxing. Really, really long exhale. And we're going to throw all 3 coins 6 times. And each time you're just going to tell me how many heads and how many tails.
Okay.
Okay, so you have hexagram 11, which is confluence, going into hexagram 9, which is temperance. So hexagram 11, this is a hexagram of powerful, fluid, effortless union. 2 rivers don't force a confluence. They naturally merge from their mutual flow. Not 1, not 2. The flow of energy can be seen in water, but it's not just water. Water makes energy visible. In a personal sense, the heart, mind, and body join forces, entering the stream together. They amplify and complement each other's power. Step into the stream and feel it on your skin. Let it permeate you. Feel how light you are here. Feel how you float. Allow yourself to be held by invisible forces. Open your body to dissolve your body. Give it to the river. Enter the stream. Have you ever heard Nina Simone's version of "He's got the whole world in his hands"?
I haven't.
You haven't. That's what this. That's what the hexagram feels like. It's a reminder that you're not in control, but you do have a choice around how much you are willing to surrender. This is a love hexagram, not formal love, boundless love. The two trigrams that make up this hexagram are heaven under earth, the union of heaven and earth, heaven supporting earth. Two people who are magnetically drawn together without knowing why. From within them is a clean, clear union of polarities from which all life can emerge. This is bigger than you and lets you feel bigger than you thought you could be. The freedom of love becoming itself between you. How much love can you hold and be held by? How much do you resist the flow? Stepping into the confluence will make this clear. This coming together is perhaps just for a moment, but it's a primal moment. Not everyone can abide a primal moment long enough to make it an actual relationship. Still, they stand at the confluence. All self-consciousness drops away. Dropping off body, you drop off mind. This is a state of being. It's also a skill. In whitewater rafting, if you fall out of the raft, put your feet up. It's when you think you're rescuing yourself by trying to touch bottom that your foot gets caught on a rock and the river drowns you. It's when you start following your mind's idea about rescue that the trouble begins. Just embody vast forces with ease. So you have two changing lines here at line 5 and line 6. Line 5 says, take a childlike rather than a childish view of the situation. Summon innocence and forgiveness. Trust. Lift your feet and trust the flow. You will land in the next right place. Have no doubt. This is an incredibly auspicious line, especially for a marriage. I mean, it's actually the best line in the whole I Ching for a question about marriage. It's just straight up unfettered good fortune. Line 6, be vulnerable. There's nothing to defend. Don't fight to keep anything. If you do, you won't know what's really yours. Release your grasp on your old defenses. They are not you, even though it can sometimes seem that way if the habits are ingrained enough to be powering your identity turbine. Further defense only brings separation. Put one foot in front of the other without much mind. Where is the defense in your body? Where do you feel the clench? Soften, soften, soften.
It's kind of one of those things where, you know, when you kind of feel off, ill-wise, and you can't really pinpoint where it is. We just know that you kind of feel off. I feel clenched just in some sort of like undescribed area.
It struck me as interesting that you're having like some thoughts about transitioning and how this is about heart, mind, and body joining forces, entering the stream together. Did any of that resonate for you?
Oh yeah. It has to, because I'm also in therapy and I'm trying to, basically enter this sort of medical side of transition with like the best state of mind possible, and really trying to recognize and give credence to my own spiritual path and what I do with it, those like magical workings that I do, and really not let them or let it. What am I trying to say here? Just not forget about it and recognize my own power and utilize it.
For what?
For going ahead with these different facets of my life. something that, I struggle with is that, sometimes I lose sight of like feeling capable and feeling, like I know what I'm doing. And I think that's a pretty normal thing for somebody who's kind of handling all this.
What specifically? What do you mean?
Well, as far as, transitioning and doing all this, adulting stuff like a license and a job and
what is the license for?
That's for so I can drive.
Oh, a driver's license. Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah.
Great. Oh, okay.
Because at this point, I know I need to be more mobile and not just confined like to my room.
How long have you been confined?
I'd say a couple years.
Just because of the pandemic, or?
That's a big part of it. Other part is, I only have a big social life, and and like I said, I'm unemployed, so I'm not really going out for any sort of work. The most it's been is just, familial, family, outings and stuff like that. But I think at this point, I'm like, well, it's going to be healthy for me to, just experience life at this age.
Mm-hmm. And how old are you now?
I just turned 24.
And so the dating aspect that you were talking about, the relationship, Hexagram 11 is so much about relationship, the relationship of two things flowing together, which is interesting because it could very well be about your transition. Yeah. And it could very well be about a relationship, like that relationship between masculine and feminine within yourself or with another person. Which resonated more for you?
I think probably with another person, because something like that has been kind of weighing on me all week. And I didn't want to come and go for that, because I remember what you said about it kind of being more focused towards I think readings being more focused towards yourself than other people. Well,
it's not generally welcomed by the I Ching for you to ask somebody else's business.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of your relationship to someone, you can get very helpful guidance toward your relationship to someone, but not stuff that's their business that has nothing to do with you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what's so interesting about what you said is that it does apply to a lot of different facets, like this relationship with another person and the transition. Like it fits in both aspects.
And that your question was about, what do I need to do to be in service to myself?
Yeah.
So how much of this transition is you being in service to yourself? Like, how much is that in service to your creative work, to your heart, to your courage in reemerging out of this confinement? Like, how much of a part does this like internal confluence?
I think a pretty big part, because it is something that is kind of, it does weigh heavily on me, but it's kind of sneaky. I always realize the sort of, negative effects that it has on me until I really, sit back and think like, oh, that's another thing. Oh, that's why I'm feeling bad today. I think transitioning for me does, what was that?
What do you mean about what would make you feel bad today?
So, very menial things about, a lot of it has to do with like the sort of superficial, like looks and, say I'm not, my hair is a mess, or my I'm showered that day, or just something where I don't see myself, at that sort of, it's very hard to explain. It's a lot of the appearance-based stuff that kind of messes with me, because there is that sort of incongruence between that outside versus the inside.
So do you feel like they match yet?
I think they're coming together slowly but surely.
So that really is the, what do you need to do to be in service to yourself? This is a huge part
It's
of
just, yeah. So just to have it like come together fully.
Mm-hmm. And so how is that impacting the other relating?
You mean like the other facets of my life that I'm working towards? My relationship. Relationships, it's interesting because it complicates things, I think. In a sense, like, because, in all honesty, like, gay men aren't interested in trans women. Straight men sometimes have, hang-ups, which is, it's valid. So it's a matter of, finding the right person, but really my main thing for a relationship is just communication. I need communication, like just blunt honesty. And when I don't get that from people, it's frustrating. And I think transition can influence that, because maybe somebody doesn't want to make you feel bad if they're not interested in trans women, or if they are interested, but perhaps they grew up in a place where that was lemonized. They might have internal feelings about dating trans women, and that sort of conflicts with their very level attraction. So it complicates things not only for me, but I think for people that I think would be into me. Not obviously not everybody, but there's a particular person that I think is kind of going through that.
And you feel like completing the surgical portion would make that easier for someone else to?
Not necessarily easier for somebody else, but for me, because it would give me the confidence to basically go about life in just a clearer mindset.
Feminine way.
Yeah. Like, I kind of liken my brain to like a computer almost, and all of this stuff is just kind of like RAM. Like it takes up too much RAM, so my other processes are slower, and I don't go about doing things or being productive in the most effective way. So transitioning is like one of those things that would help clear things up and help me run faster.
Oh, so you feel like you're kind of like maybe squandering a lot of life force on like being in this in-between time?
I think so, yeah. I tend to squander a lot of life force on a lot. I'm a person who tends to put my eggs in one basket, so to speak. I put a lot of energy into stuff that I care about, even if it doesn't always reciprocate that energy for me.
How come?
I tend to be, I guess, an optimist in things, and try to see how things can work out, and try to connect, the puzzle pieces. And
with your mind or your body?
With my mind. And this is more for like relationship dating type of things. In particular, if I like somebody, I tend to really fall hard for them. And it's always the most beneficial thing for me to do that, because it can result in this sort of system where I'm just, it's like borderline obsessive almost.
Mm-hmm. What do you gain? What do you gain through that?
A lot of anxiety, a lot of unnecessary worry and pain, and
And what do you gain from? What do you not have to do if you're preoccupied with anxiety or worry or pain?
What do I not have to do?
Mm-hmm. It's very time consuming.
It is.
Obsession is by nature like a way to consume time. It is like by design a way to consume life force energy.
Absolutely. It's a lot of time that I invest into these things that I think because anxiety tends to point at the puzzle pieces in the worst outcome, and tends to show you like what could be the worst outcome. I try to counteract that and think of the best outcomes. And
so you see anxiety as separate from you? Like anxiety is pointing out one thing where you're trying to point out something else?
I think so. I think it's a part of me, but I also think that there's a separation between what the anxiety tells me and what my intellectual brain tells me.
Okay, so it's really interesting that you've gotten 11 then. 11 is about flowing together. So it's making me want to ask you, what parts of you are already unified?
I don't know. I think that intellectual side of me is pretty unified in my way of it's hard because I do separate the anxiety, even though it is a part of me. It doesn't show me the truth in things. So I guess what I feel unified is in when I'm in that state of knowing and just having that knowledge on something, like for certain, if that makes sense.
Can you say that another way?
I'm trying to think in what ways I do feel unified with my family. I have a very good family. The friend that I do have is very, very supportive, brings out the best in me, brings it in each other. So I feel unified in choosing the right friendships, I think. And I feel unified in when I know something for a fact. When I know that, I guess a silly example is that my friend is going hiking, and my anxiety is like, they slipped and fell off a cliff. And it will keep telling me that because, they're in a very mountainous region and accidents do happen. However, when they get back and they're like, oh, it's such an amazing trip, that fact that they're okay, and that, that anxious side is basically like has no credibility anymore. I feel unified in knowing that wasn't true, and that I have power over that.
How does that influence how you hear from within that surge of energy the next time?
I think it allows me to differentiate what intuition feels like and what anxiety feels like. because
Ooh,
it's
that's really interesting. Say more about that. Is that a differentiation that's happening in your mind or a differentiation that's happening in your body?
in my body.
Okay.
Because that is something that I've been like trying to work on, really deciphering like those minute feelings and how they differ. And I guess it might be a little bit of both of mind and body, because I do feel it all throughout my body, but it's my mind that kind of sends it down, like.
Okay.
And I think
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Finish. Go ahead.
Well, I think that how I would differ those two feelings is that one gives me like a very jagged sort of feeling of what if. It's kind of this stabbing emotion. And intuition, it's blunt. It's blunt, and it tells you what it is, and it's very all encompassing, like mind and body. Just it's kind of tells you the business, and even if it's something you don't want to hear, you're kind of strangely okay with it.
Mm-hmm. How? Why? What makes you strangely okay?
I think because it allows me to process that grief or that anger or whatever that might be feeling, and it lets me. I always say, knowledge is power. If I have knowledge of, okay, this is the fact, this is what's happening, then I have power over it to see, if I can do anything about it, or if I can't, and just let it be.
Do you ever take that approach to your anxiety?
It's something that I try to do. Sometimes those waves are kind of more like a tsunami, but I do think it's a good base to handle that anxiety, because it really does set things in perspective. Kind of, it's like a lawyer, like a really good lawyer. And it's like, well, actually, you might be thinking that they fell off a cliff, but in all actuality, it effectively argues against that sort of negative rumination that happens.
Do you get out of the house for walks at all?
When it's warm, I do.
So this time of year, would you get out much? Like, how many times a week would you get out and get some fresh air?
Not much. If it's somebody's birthday or somebody's I'm going to New York for something. I'd say maybe a couple times a month. Like 3 on average.
That's like getting outdoors at all.
Yes.
Okay.
That's like going from the house to the car.
Okay. So do you connect that with your anxiety at all?
I think maybe, yeah. I think I know it's because in the summer I would go out every day and walk. And walking for me is very. I walk at night because it's quiet, it's cool. There's nobody really around to talk to, and it lets me really just kind of become like a marionette almost. I like that feeling.
Well, what does that feel like?
I can kind of turn off some of those processes, like and just kind of be with my mind. And I think it's a similar feeling to people who drive, who when they're anxious, they just drive and go whichever place. I get the same feeling from walking.
You just get to move through space without a destination. Yeah, just moving through space.
Yeah. and my mind gets to move too. It gets to, because oftentimes we'll be kind of stuck in this. If I'm ruminating, then it's good for not only my body to move, but my mind. Because when I'm out there, I can really just work through myself, if that makes sense.
Are you happy to be seen now?
By other people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm hearing you talk about not leaving the house now or like walking at night. And at the same time, you're going through all of these wonderful efforts to have your inside match your outside. And so I'm curious, like, how are you feeling about being seen right now? Like what keeps you from wanting to be outside more? Or I know it's cold, obviously, but like even when it's warm, walking at night, and like how are you feeling now that you are kind of entering a sense of confluence between body, heart, and mind?
I think it's very freeing. I think I'm much better about being seen by other people nowadays than I was before. Mm-hmm. Because nowadays I can kind of navigate public without really any issue. And although it kind of does make me nervous to kind of face the world, I know that it's also beneficial for me to do so, because I think we as humans need interaction and, seeing the other faces. And even if we don't interact with people, it's good to know that other people are there and doing their thing.
Even good to just interact, like smiling at the person at the coffee place, or like behind you in line at the supermarket. So
Absolutely.
So are there outings to the supermarket or anything, or like the outings seem very limited?
They are very limited. And that's one of the reasons why I want to go for my license, so I can be more mobile and can go to the market for my grandpa, because I live with my grandparents, and do go to the market for him, or go visit my friends when I want to, when they're not, when they don't have like a ride available. Or even something that you mentioned in your initial message was like, when you say something like epic, go to Barcelona. Like, well, I'm Sagittarius. Doesn't sound too bad, but I think I could go to across the country if I wanted to, and I think as long as I knew that I had my house to come back to, then I'll be fine, because I'm weirdly attached. Like, I kind of like overly attached to my house. I kind of see it as like an entity almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sense of place can function like that.
Yeah, it's because I grew up here, and it's really been.
Grow up with your grandparents?
Mm-hmm. I grew up with my grandparents and my mother.
Nice. What part of the country are you in?
I'm in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Nice. North or south?
North. I'm like 45 minutes from New York City.
Nice. That's great.
It's got the best of both worlds, with like the seasons and going to the shore, going to the city. Yeah.
So I want to read you this second hexagram.
Okay.
But I'd like us to do a couple more of those breaths that have the really, really long out breath.
Okay.
Because I'm feeling a little bit of that, like the jaggedness from you. And I just want you to kind of soften and relax and come down into your feet a little bit, and just feel free to open and ground a little bit more.
Okay.
Just let that exhale be as long as you can, so that that parasympathetic nervous system can come online and get it out of vigilance a little bit. Relax that a little bit. Just come down in the body.
It's a great inhibitor. Ready?
And just let that energy, that feeling, that energy that surges and that's coming out jagged right now, let those edges soften and melt.
I like that. I like how you describe that.
Feel all of that melting permeate you. Let yourself be permeable. Let all of those shards melt. All those edges just melt. Feel all that energy that's up in your head. Let it keep buzzing. Listen to the hum of it and tune down that hum by 2 notes. Take it down by 2 notes and let it get thick. Let it get thick and let it fall out of your head and all the way down your body. Let it stay buzzing, but be thick and warm and come all the way down your body until it lands in your feet. Coating the underside of your whole skin inside. Just letting go of effort, letting go of being right, letting go of needing to be anything at all. Opening yourself to interpenetration, being enfolded in the environment that you're in, being enveloped by the ecosystem that you're in, both in and out, beyond your house, beyond your neighborhood, beyond your state, beyond the country, beyond the world. Just feeling the bottoms of your feet open, feeling little roots coming out of them and tapping all the way down into the center of the earth. With all the surge of anxiety that you have, those roots push down deeper and deeper and deeper into the soil, and they push all the way down into the mantle of the earth and down into the core of the earth until it's too hot for them to go anymore, and they melt into everything that is in the core of the earth. And all that energy comes down out of your head and out through your feet. Goes back into the core of the earth. We'll read a little bit from Temperance, which is your second hexagram.
Okay.
Meticulous and wild, the ingenue makes her debut. She learns how to embody wild forces like anxiety with grace. She holds dignity and pleasure in equal measure. She does small things with care, and they have a big impact. You can't be tamed and tempered until you taste the power of wildness. There is an important nuance between temperance and self-abandonment. Temperance asks you to notice and embody this nuance. We feel the sensation of danger, and we notice how our body responds. We notice how our mind aligns and doesn't. We discern whether we trust our metabolism enough to soften and move with the sensation of danger so we aren't snagged and snapped. Taming emerges from trust. Do you trust yourself to metabolize whatever comes, even when it feels threatening? To move when it's time to move and be still when a pause is called for? Where does your trust falter? Where are you clenched and bracing to be broken? Can you be small and supple? You are Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf now. Grandmother in the woods are watching. Trust your instincts. Your body knows. The danger is real and it's all yours. Step out into the dark. Go to grandmother's ancestral house blithely through the forest. You won't be able to wield your power responsibly if you turn away. If you turn away, the wolf will eat you. It will come as anxiety, panic, existential dread. Meet the wolf. Welcome him with a treat in your hand. Teach him to sit and stay. Tame the feral animal from the inside out. Like the fox says in The Little Prince, you become responsible forever for what you have tamed. What we tame belongs to us, including the wolf under our skin. Taming comes from love. The only way back home is through the dark. Having been transformed by animal and ancestor, she is aware of how she moves through the forest. She is aware of the presence of trees and birds and moonlight and the wolf at the end of her leash. At home, she tends the hearth fire in which she cooks and nourishes. She doesn't use the fire to burn the house down. She tends the transformation of all her ingredients. There is ash, but ash isn't her objective. She sweeps it up and adds it to the garden. She finds a use for everything. No one goes hungry in her house. She lives where water meets rock. Like them, she abides in time, gently relentless. Her influence is spacious and pervasive. She welcomes all to her humble, tidy hut. She is not revolutionary, for she is at home in all conditions. She doesn't insist, she persists. She tends the tiny. She does not exhaust herself or others. She replenishes quietly and with care. Eternal, intimate, pure, and joyful, she brings beauty to all she touches. Her touches are small. She attends to the details, the small breeze that makes the oak leaves shudder. Notice, attend and tame. Let the feral animal grow tender. Tidy up.
Wow.
So how does that land in terms of your question about what you need to do to be in service to yourself?
Something that struck out at me was the metabolizing aspect. I think when it mentioned something about how it felt like it could feel threatening, that's very true. It does. It feels threatening, and it can kind of prevent me from metabolizing it, because
what feels
I want to feel that. Because I've had worries about, applying for jobs, because it does break that sort of routine that I've been in for a long time. And, it just gets flooded with these thoughts of like, well, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to mess up. And, which is silly to worry about a job that I don't even have yet.
Not silly. It's not silly.
Yeah, it's not, but it's
not that helpful, but it's not silly.
It's not helpful at all.
We all do it. We all future fuck ourselves here and there,
I think something that was that you said was like that just really went like ping for me, was when you said to smooth out that jagged feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know, because I kind of see these feelings as, shapes almost.
Can you feel when your edges start to sharpen in that anxious, like fractured way?
Yes.
Okay.
And which is ironic, because it does feel like a sort of stabbing thing.
Yeah, that's how it feels. Even sitting across from you in a Zoom, like it.
Yeah, you can pick up on it.
I definitely feel the fragmentation of the energy, like it's out of flow, and so that's why I'm very interested, particularly as. I mean, it's your relationship to your body is fascinating, because you are deliberately changing it to be more at home in it.
Yeah.
So I find it even more interesting, this feeling of like what will finally allow you to land in your skin and have that sense of softness that you're obviously cultivating. So where's like that, where's the resistance that you're still holding to fully move into that softness?
I can blame external.
Mm-hmm.
I can blame external factors like, nobody in the adult world wants to do anything but their own job, and just everything takes forever and a day to move along with. But I think fear is a really big inhibitor.
Mm-hmm. Fear of being seen outside. Fear of being seen. Some internal fear.
I think it's almost like a distorted fear.
Of what?
Like of how other people are going to react or see you. And it's not only to do with transitioning and like see me as how I feel, but perceive you in how you are. And for example, I joined this server with a whole bunch of my friends from school, and I found myself always just microanalyzing all my conversations with them, because there's this sort of distorted fear that they perceive me in a negative way, when that's not even the case. It's this sort of distorted fear that this sort of jaggedness kind of creates, that really can inhibit me from moving forward. So with them, interacting with them, going to share stuff that I like with them, because of some sort of fear that they wouldn't be interested or not, or make those sort of micro judgments that some people make. And
so
I think
what I'm hearing you say, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that you're in this really tender spot of like, for a while, feeling like your inside didn't match to your outside and feeling a level of discomfort and dissonance because of that. Yes. And now you're cultivating this matchup for yourself, but there's still a level of dissonance around how you're being perceived outside.
Yes.
So that seems like such an impossible situation almost. So what will give you rest?
Closure.
On what?
Proving those thoughts wrong. I think.
How will you do that? What will you accept as proof? And like which thoughts?
For one examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please. That are in line with your question of like, what do I need to do to be in service to myself? And so what's coming up for me now that we cast the hexagrams and reading the hexagrams, I wonder, like, what is it you will need? Like, what are the next steps to like sort of accept your service to yourself? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
To let it come in.
Yeah. Like, what will give you rest?
Yeah.
Is rest possible in this scenario at any point, At what point will you decide to be, at what point will you be able to abide in ease? Do you think? Do you have moments of that or glimpses of it?
I do. I think something that really helped was the meditation that we did just now. Because I never thought of, like you said, smoothing it out. I never thought of it in that way. That really helped. I think I'm obviously still a little, but I think, meditation and having a balance of assuring myself and also proving myself with these.
To whom?
To myself.
What proof of yourself would be sufficient for yourself? Which self are you trying to prove to which self?
I'm trying to prove the anxious jaggedness wrong.
So have you considered that wrestling with it in that way just amplifies it?
I haven't.
That you're actually lending it that energy by wrestling with it and amplifying it rather than quelling it?
Yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, I never thought about that before. Because I do spend a lot of time searching for facts and like tangible proof that side is wrong. That I kind of miss the big idea of trying just to quell it in the first place. I don't have to do this sort of lawyer searching for.
Right. But what would happen if you just spread self-compassion all over it? Just slathered it in self-compassion?
I don't know. Because I don't. Sometimes I can do that unconsciously, but I don't know how to consciously do it.
I think it's a lot like the way you slather frosting on a cupcake. Just spread it on there. Just get out your butter knife and be like, all right, I'm going to spread self-compassion on this energy, like so much buttercream. I mean, it's your energy to move with as you please. It's yours. Yeah. So you can work with it however you want. If there's some kind of vigor that comes out of capping it in a way that we label anxiety, then there's certainly a lot of that can certainly be a good engine for certain things. It can also be a very handy way to squander that energy because you're so busy pathologizing it that you don't use it for anything.
Exactly. And a lot of times it takes more energy to pathologize it and try to search for that, answer than just to get the butter knife and.
It takes a lot more energy to pathologize it and think about how to heal the pathology than it does to just meet it with self-compassion. And respect it as energy and respect it as sensation without needing to call it anything, but just letting it run.
Yeah. Because it's like, if it runs, I'm like, oh my gosh, where is it running to? I have to catch it.
And where might it drag you if you let it run without capping it? Because it's only gonna read as anxiety if you're trying to cap it. It's like trying to cap a geyser. Good luck. Okay. The forces underground that have coalesced to make that geyser are way out of your control. Those are vast forces over giant spans of time. And so your anxiety, you're getting a surge from underground that is coming out of causes and conditions beyond you. So yes, you can try to cap it and pathologize it if you want, or you can allow it to run. And you can see where it runs. Let it run. Yeah, let it run.
When it runs, does that I'm trying to think of how to ask this. So when it runs, would that make me do things and go about things in a way that wouldn't be beneficial to myself? Or
when it runs, I would suggest that as you learn how to be with it running, you would sit as still as possible on the ground and feel the sensation of what it feels like to let it run without calling it anything. And like have that feeling of feeling like you're going to crawl out of your skin, having that feeling like you want to pull for a distraction. Have that feeling until you come to the point of understanding in your bones the question of what is unbearable. At what level is the sensation unbearable? What is the tone, texture, temperature, and color of your anxiety?
It's red. It's jagged. It's hot. And sometimes it simmers. Other times it boils.
What happens to all hot things according to the laws of thermodynamics?
The molecules go faster?
For a while. What happens to your hot coffee in the morning?
It cools.
Where does that energy go?
To the surroundings?
Sure. It finds a new gradient. It's never lost. It's never destroyed. It's always finding a new gradient. Energy is always moving through us, finding a new gradient. So what does that say about anxiety?
I think because I label anxiety as a type of energy, that I worry that its gradients is going to affect my surroundings. Like if it's going to come off on you or the people that I live with, or
that depends on your behavioral response to that sensation. Are you throwing that energy at other people because you can't hold it?
I think it's sort of, I try to hold it like, but it's heavy. It's also very heavy, and it kind of spills.
Okay. What if you hold it very, very softly and let it permeate you instead of trying to wrangle it and embody it the same way a cup of coffee embodies heat? Just sit with it until it quite naturally dissipates and moves on to another gradient, which it will in time, every time.
Is it? Because in my mind, so if, for example, if I let it dissipate and it's going to go into my bed.
Sure, fine.
So then I want to be laying in it.
Well, it'll dissipate from your bed. It will continue to move outward until it finds a new place where someone is deliberately coalescing energy, where somebody's turning on the fire or putting on the microwave or flipping on the light switch, a place where coalescence of energy is required. If you can release
or not erase, but move it to a faraway place. Is that possible?
That's pushing and forcing. And that's another way of giving it more of your energy. And my suggestion to you would be to learn how to just sit and watch it dissipate gently.
Okay.
Gently.
Even if it's on the bed?
Sure. On the floor is even better.
On the floor. To not kind of cleanse, cleanse it?
It's not bad energy. It's neutral. There's nothing to cleanse. It's not dirty. It's not damaged. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just more than you're willing to work with at this moment.
Okay.
Does that frame make sense?
What was that?
Does that frame make sense?
Yes. Because I fear that, because I do label it, or did label it bad, like bad energy. Mm-hmm. And I'm so concerned of it dissipating to those around me that I kind of try to wrangle it and keep it in. And
yeah, I think your need to control it is part of what's keeping it in you.
Yeah.
This is why I'm suggesting if you can just sit on the floor and watch what it does without your interference, you might be pleasantly surprised. Maybe not. Your mileage may vary. I'm not a psychiatrist.
Speaking of, I do record my thoughts and kind of like what's going on my phone. And it would be really interesting to kind of sit and record the next time I have those feelings, like what that energy does.
Because this temperance hexagram number 9 is very much about being able to embody wild forces with ease. And it's being able to be Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf until you walk the wolf on your own leash, until you learn to embody those wild forces within your own skin. That's why I'm kind of bringing us a little deeper into this because you have hexagram 9, and it is like that embodied yin, that embodied feminine, being able to really run the full dark, rich yin spectrum.
Yeah.
All of that grandmother and the wolf in the deep, deep woods, all of that yummy, yummy yin. You can't embody that until you fully taste it. You can't tame it until you fully taste it. That's why I would suggest to you that in the context of this reading,
knowledge is power.
That anxiety is actually an invitation. If you can see it as an invitation to really build your nervous system capacity and to really be with a tremendous amount of sensation without losing your shit or needing to turn away from it, you will have a great deal of power. And you will have a great deal of unfettered creativity to be able to do whatever it is you're here to do, which seems giant to me.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to build those skills now to be able to hold that energy instead of turning away from it and pathologizing it and being afraid of it.
What do you think a good first step would be to kind of build those skills?
Sit. When you feel anxious, sit on the ground and do the exhale, the longer exhale than inhale. That will bring the parasympathetic nervous system online, and you can watch how that energy runs through you as sensation without a name. Just as sensation in your body. Feel the sensation in your body.
Would it be beneficial to describe those sensations and record them?
I would suggest first, you just feel it. And then once it passes, which it will, then you can write down what that experience was like. And you can continue. But I would really love personally for you to really just be with it and not bring it up to your mind and just let it run in your body. Don't try to find words for it at first. Just let it run in your system. Just leave your mind's need to extrude it into something else alone until it's passed. And then you can return to your safe zone of language and all that once it's passed, because you will be in that safe place of the deep abiding confidence of realizing that it will always pass.
Yes. I think a lot of times I get so caught up in, the sort of, I guess, more earthly concepts of language and really trying to pull and factor in everything.
Yeah, it's all part of it. And you're already good at that part. So let's cultivate this other thing. Let's bring up this other skill.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very beneficial.
Great.
For all of these things. It's amazing. Because I never thought about doing that before. It's always been so kind of into, I think it gets to a certain level too. It gets so intense that you kind of, not can't, but just really shy away from it.
Well, and maybe can't for a moment. But even in that moment where you can't grip it or titrate it, you can still get down on the ground. And so I'm saying, if all you can do in that moment is get down on the ground, get down on the ground. And then once you can do the longer exhale, do the longer exhale.
Okay.
But take it one step at a time and watch the tide go out. Feel the tide go out in your body. Because you owe it to yourself to not be squandering so much in this jaggedness.
Because it does
so much to offer to be doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And on that note, I have to go eat dinner. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, it was an honor. Thank you. Really, really helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad. All right. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us on the Fuck Suffering podcast with me, your hostess, Ray Hance. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, come to rayhance.com, REIHANCE, and send us a message. If you're interested in the book that I use to do readings on this podcast, it's called Oracle of Emergence, an Evolutionary I Ching. That's my book, and it's available on Amazon. If you would love to help us grow our audience, because you enjoyed the podcast so much, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And in the meantime, God, we really can't fuck suffering until we trust suffering. And in a wild existential kink, we are all in that together. Till next time.